We have this arrogant belief that the earth is solved. We think every inch beneath our feet has been mapped, labeled, and filed away in a textbook. We assume that the unknown is behind us, but we are wrong. That confidence is really a modern stance, and honestly, it's a fragile one. Because just a few feet below the surface of our modern world, a lot of our earthling history is hiding. For most of human history, the smartest people who have ever lived didn't assume that the earth was simple. They assumed it was mysterious, alive, and layered. In 1962, Edmond Halley, the man who gave us the comet, think, right, Halley's comet, made a proposal that sounds almost laughable to the modern ear. Using the very physics that Isaac Newton had just laid down, he suggested that the Earth might not be solid all the way through. He imagined circular shells rotating within one another, potentially even inhabited. To him, this wasn't a fantasy or conspiracy theory. It was a serious attempt to explain the strange behavior of our Earth's magnetic field. Now, we like to look back and say, well, they didn't know any better back then. But when NASA deliberately impacted the moon with an object, they did this to study its internal structure, that impact didn't make a thud like you would think it would if the moon was a solid rock. That impact caused the moon to ring like a bell for hours, as if it were hollow on the inside. Now, none of this proves a hollow earth, but it does quietly undermine our favorite story, that everything is solid, known, and static. In 2013, I traveled to Cappadocia, Turkey. On the surface, this place looks like an alien landscape with towering fairy chimneys of soft volcanic rocks, stretching out literally as far as the eye can see. It's absolutely beautiful. But the real story wasn't what I was looking at. It was what I was standing on. Beneath my shoes lay something that shouldn't be possible. There are roughly 150 to 200 underground cities capable of hosting hundreds of thousands, possibly over 1 million people. The most popular underground city in this area is called Derinkuyu. Now, when most people hear underground city, they picture like a few damp tunnels or bunkers, but Derinkuyu is not that. It is 18 stories deep. It goes down nearly 300 feet into the earth. In Derinkuyu alone, which is only one of the many underground cities, Derinkuyu is vast enough to shelter 20,000 people. Just let that number sink in. 20,000 people in just this one of the many underground cities. This wasn't a hole in the ground. It was a masterpiece of engineering with these massive stone doors weighing thousands of pounds each that can only be rolled shut from the inside. There were these advanced ventilation shafts carved through hundreds of feet of solid rock, and they're so precisely designed that fresh air still moves cleanly through even the deepest parts of these underground chambers today. Whoever engineered this didn't just survive down there, they lived. There are wine presses, stables for livestock. There are schools down there, chapels, kitchens. There are these freshwater wells that were deliberately cut off from the Earth's surface, preventing any sort of maybe contamination or poisoning of the water supply. This was a fully functioning, multi-level civilization capable of disappearing from the face of the earth instantly and staying hidden for generations. That is a historical fact. We know humans have the technology to live deep inside the planet. We know they have done it before in order to survive. But there are even older stories, far older stories, the ones that we've essentially dismissed as myths. They aren't about humans going down to hide for whatever reason. They are about humans coming up to begin. In 1997, archaeologist Holly Moyes led an expedition into a vast cave system in Belize called Aktun Tunichu Muknal. What began as a simple survey turned into something far more unsettling. As her team moved deeper into the caves, the passages kept descending. There were these like narrow corridors that would open up into massive chambers, mile after mile. The cave continued without an end in sight. Inside, they found thousands of offerings left by the ancient Mayans, an extremely advanced civilization. They found ceremonial tools, intricately crafted ceramics, blades, and they found remains, human remains, not scattered but placed deliberately, as if this cave was not a simple burial site but a destination. To a modern mind, this raises immediate questions. Why drag heavy, precious objects and people through a terrifying obstacle course just to leave them in the absolute dark where no one will ever see them? But to the Mayans, it would have not been confusing at all. The answer lies in a simple difference between us and them. When we look down in our today's culture, we think of like hell or darkness or death or some sort of negative sense. But the Maya didn't see it that way. They called this underground world Xibalba. Xibalba wasn't a place you went to be punished. It was a place of creation. To them, caves were the womb of the earth. They weren't hiding these offerings. They were returning them to the source. This matters because what archaeologist Holly Moyes uncovered wasn't random. The Mayan were an extraordinarily advanced civilization, masters of astronomy, mathematics, architecture, and timekeeping. They aligned temples to celestial cycles. They tracked planetary movements with stunning precision. Their rituals were intentional, symbolic, and cosmically informed. But here's where the story gets strange. If these caves were the house of creation, then who was the landlord? Who did the ancients believe was watching them from the dark inside the earth? Now, this is where you might want to keep an open mind because the answer is strange. When you look at the ancient texts, not just the Maya, but in India, in Asia, Sumer, Egypt, the Americas, I mean, there's so many to name there. It's all over the place. The beings said to rule these underground realms were not abstract forces. They were described as humanoid, yet reptilian-like, intelligent reptilian humanoids. These reptilian yet humanoid guardians of subterranean realms appear again and again and again and again across cultures and across time periods. It's ancient and persistent, and it's really difficult to dismiss it as just a coincidence. I know. Today, the word reptilian makes us think of sci-fi movies or conspiracy theories. But just forget all of that for a second. Look at history. Why did the Maya worship the vision serpent? Why do Indian traditions speak of the Naga, which are massive, intelligent serpent beings living in underground palaces? Why is the oldest guardian archetype on Earth a reptile? Maybe it's because the reptile is the oldest survivor on this planet, or maybe they saw something we have forgotten. Perhaps it's because survival is the core of this entire mystery. The Maya believed we were living in the fifth world. There were 4 worlds that came before us. Each was destroyed by a catastrophe. The first world was destroyed by wind. The second world was destroyed by fire. One world was destroyed by ice, and the fourth world? Well, they said the fourth world ended in a flood. And that flood story, so often dismissed as myth, appears almost everywhere. I'm talking across continents, across cultures, across time periods. And if you want to explore that story further, I go much deeper into it in my episode titled Forgotten Stories, Forgotten Roots. The Hopi people tell a similar story. Their legends tell us that when the surface of the world was being destroyed by fire and ice, Humanity did not survive by fighting. They survived by being invited in. They were taken underground and sheltered by the Anusinum, which translates as the ant people. Now, when you hear the name ant people, don't picture little garden insects. The Hopi describe these beings as tall, humanoid giants, but with insect-like features, who walked on, two legs and possessed this immense wisdom. When the cataclysm struck, these ant people didn't conquer or frighten us humans. They ushered us into the inner earth. They fed us, they sheltered us, and they taught us how to keep the peace until the storm on the surface had passed. Think about the psychological weight of that story. It's not a story of a dungeon. It's a story of a sanctuary. And once you see this pattern, this idea that the old ones didn't die, but they simply went underground, you start to see this everywhere. In the Amazon, indigenous tribes speak of entrances to the inner worlds guarded by giants. But in their stories, these giants aren't monsters to be slain. They are guardians who offer fruit and protection to those who approach them with respect. In Ireland, when the Age of Men began, the Tuatha Danann, who were this magical, godlike race, they didn't go extinct. The myth says they simply withdrew into the hollow hills, moving their civilization into the veil between the crust of the earth and the deep. Even the stories that sound darker follow this same map. In the Hebrew tradition, the Watchers, who were these powerful, non-human angels, were cast down into the deep abyss of our planet after they became infatuated with human women and began breeding with us. We usually interpret this descent as a punishment, a prison sentence. But whether those living underground were teachers like the ant people, or guardians like the Amazonian giants, or castaways like the Nephilim, the arrow always points in the same direction. The ancients believed that the earth wasn't just a rock we live on. They believed it was a container. So what are we really looking at here? Are these just myths, or are they the records of a species that survived cataclysm after cataclysm? I mean, cosmic impacts, ice ages, volcanic winters, by doing the only thing that really works, going down below. And this is where the two threads tie together. We have stories of fleeing into the earth for refuge and stories of emerging from the earth as a creation event. So why? I don't know. Maybe because they're kind of the same story. Our ancestors went down into the refuge to survive the end of one world, and generations later, their children emerge from the earth to begin the next. The inner earth becomes a womb. Today we see the ground and we see dirt, but our ancestors looked down and saw a mother, a protector, and a mystery. These stories remind me that we may be a species with amnesia, one that has forgotten vast chapters of our own story, walking on top of a history that we have paved over and forgotten. And perhaps that's the real lesson here. Not that the earth is hollow, but that our certainty might be. Because maybe we didn't just climb down from the stars. Maybe we climbed up from the depths of our Mother Earth. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you have ideas for future topics like this, feel free to share those too. Have a good week.